Hey guys, this is Hector from the Insert Name FC podcast here to tell you guys about Canadips. It is a great tasting, superior alternative to traditional dip using CBD in a way that is radical, enjoyable, and effective. It comes in 5 core flavors: wintergreen, mint, citrus, mango, and American spice. Canadips CBD is the new evolution in dip, allowing guys to enjoy great, long-lasting taste without the downsides. If you guys want to go ahead and try them out, use the code BELLYUP20 at CanadipsCBD.com. Once again, BELLYUP20 at CanadipsCBD.com, and you'll get yourself 20% off your purchase. Thank you again for Canadips for being a great partner of Belly Up Sports.
Caven Sullivan signs with Philly at age 14 to count down on the homegrown phenom to make his debut as the youngest MLS player ever. So obviously, Caven Sullivan, if you guys don't know, at the time, he's 14 years old. I believe now he's 15. Highest homegrown contract in MLS history. Obviously, this is all that happened last year. Is now the youngest MLS player ever to debut. I'm sure at some point we'll break that record. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it's a very unique situation with Caven Sullivan. He has a lot of hype behind him. I saw him in person at Generation Adidas Cup. Fun fact, if you guys have MLS Season Pass, you do get matches of Generation Adidas Cup, which is coming up next month, I believe. So if you guys want to see how these MLS academies have grown, because obviously everyone keeps making fun of that the MLS doesn't have good academies. You're not completely wrong, but there are some actual good MLS academies, and if you want to see it in person, Generation Adidas Cup, which also features other academies as well from Spain, England. I think they even had when I was there was a country, an academy from Africa also that was there. So it's a really cool tournament. I think it's awesome. If you guys get a chance to watch it. I generally, and I think Jose maybe one day for goals and Insert Name FC actually be there at a Generation Adidas Cup. Not as a worker, maybe would be a fun time.
Yeah, absolutely, bro. Actually, if you haven't heard of it, go guys, go look at it, man. It's a lot of very promising prospects coming through though.
Yeah, and Caven Sullivan is one of those instances. So just so you guys are frame of reference, when I was working with the Dynamo, when we were at Generation Adidas Cup, everyone was talking about Caven Sullivan because he was 13 years old playing for the U15 Philadelphia Union Academy, which I believe that year I think the U15 lost to Austin's academy, and then this U17 team defeated FC Dallas's academy, which once again there's a goalkeeper that used to be in the FC Dallas system that I was like, I need this kid to be tested because there's no way that kid's a grown man. So
Are you talking about Eyestone?
Eyestone, that dude,
Yeah,
I was like, wait, that's the goalkeeper for Dallas? And they're like, yep. That guy's a man. Like, just like,
dude is built for the Premier League, and that is where he is.
yeah. Also, if you guys want to get a good idea of if there's any hype amongst an MLS Academy product, just look at their cleats. If they're not wearing Adidas cleats, it's because Nike or whoever wanted to get ahead of everything. Also, if you're Caven Sullivan, because this kid the following year was wearing the Nike Prada exclusive I guess Adidas wanted to jump on it. But anyways, he was 13 years old playing for the U15 team for Philadelphia. So he jumped 2 age groups to play in that tournament. I do believe Philadelphia had a U16 team as well. I don't know if that's changed. But yeah, so they had that. It was actually really cool. I got to see him in person, and I was just like, this is a 13-year-old playing against kids that are significantly bigger than him. Obviously did fairly well, made it to the final, lost it, but still made it to the final nonetheless. And then he went on to represent the U15 USA team and actually, I believe, got player of the tournament. Once again, playing up 2 age groups once again. So as far as hype goes, yes, there is a lot of hype around this kid, but I think he definitely does back it up. Now, Jose, you probably don't have much first eye experience on Caven Sullivan, but when you were hearing all the hype about this Caven Sullivan kid, which I'm sure he was everywhere in social media as far as if you have anything that's following soccer, especially in the U.S., what were your thoughts when you heard about this 13, 14-year-old phenom?
Actually, Hector, I do have very little in-person experience watching him play. I was at All-Star Weekend, yeah, and he was there for the MLS. He like made an appearance with like I think it was MLS Next All-Stars, I believe, because of the age thing. He hadn't yet been playing with the actual MLS players just yet, so got a chance to like very very briefly. I think for the sake of like injury and just promising prospects, they didn't really play him all that much, but you could see it. And I think from what I've seen on Cavan Sullivan, even just in the very limited amount of time he's gotten with the first team, I think when I watch players play, especially attacking minded players, I think what I look for is something that Jim Curtin actually, and we'll talk about it throughout this video today. Something he mentioned during this episode, which is like his explosiveness in the attack. I think his ability in a young attacker, it's not so much what they do once they're running in a straight line or already dribbling at pace and trying to get around a defender. I think when you're past the ball, you receive it, how quickly can you get out of the blocks, right? How quickly can you take the ball, make that first two steps, and beat your man? And I think that is something I look for always. I'm a defender by nature, and so I just have a keen eye, I think, for that, like for attackers, wingers, forwards who are going to try and get around me. I would pay attention for the first few times they touch the ball and how quickly they would turn it up from them. He's pretty special in that department. I think his explosiveness is really unreal. And guys, I was around, and Hector, I'm sure you were around too, right? To watch Freddy Adu do it back in the day. And Freddy Adu, one, was a PR fucking machine, but I never really thought, this is not a slight against Freddy Adu. I just never really thought he was the most explosive player. I never thought he was the fastest player, the most athletic. Obviously, he was 14 back then. It was just like he had a fantastic touch. His finishing was pretty damn good. He tended to find himself in the right places at the right times. Also came up with a sibling. And so I saw some things in Cavan Sullivan that I didn't really see in Freddy Adu or any other youngster, frankly, their age. I can only imagine what Cavan would do at the high school level, at the college level, because his ability to quickly turn it up to another level is unreal.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, we could go ahead and touch up the whole Freddy Adu thing because this, obviously, this is a little bit different of how MLS Onside did, obviously, because you're not following two teams, you're just following one specific player and his family, and the game that is leading up to is the game that's going to potentially have Caven Sullivan break Freddy Adu's record, which is to be the youngest MLS player to debut. And yeah, I mean, and that is a talking point in this episode where they bring up, is this going to be another Freddy Adu situation? I think contextually there's two different things that are happening. One you mentioned as far as the play style goes with Caven versus Freddy Adu, but the other thing is Caven, at least at this point, obviously it's not perfect, but there is a system now in MLS. There is a process from academy player. The fact that there's even an academy, because I don't even think at that time there was MLS academies. So there's actually a route for a young player to be able to go besides going and playing high school soccer, going to a college, and getting drafted. Now the whole Freddie Adu thing, I honestly forgot how exactly he got into the eyes of DC United, but they saw a really good 14-year-old and said, "Why not? Let's go get him." And which obviously in reality, this is outside of all the norms when it comes to American sports, because you don't sign kids that are only freshmen in high school. I mean, yes, we had Kobe Bryant and Kevin Garnett, but those guys were graduating high school, and also they're like 6'4" or 7 feet tall. So I mean, yeah, I don't know. You probably should draft that kid, but for the Freddie Adu situation, like there was no proper channel to make him be ready to be a pro. Whereas, kind of how I mentioned with Caven Sullivan, he was going through the proper youth system. Okay, going through a youth system. I'm not going to use the word proper. Going through a youth system and has proven himself that he is so better at his age group that they had to jump him over twice to be in a competitive. And I mean, essentially, the following year, the year before, once again, well, he was playing U17s the year before that. Where else can he be? Let's see what he does against grown men. And I guess he got the nod for Union 2, and that's what got him his shot with. And obviously, the other thing is also this kid, when he turns 18, is going to join Manchester City. So there's that contract as well that is also looming over. But obviously, I think the whole big difference is the fact that Caven went through a system versus Freddy Adu. Really don't remember. I really don't even recall the proper channels that came into Freddy Adu being signed by DC United.
It was very, very different. 'Cause I remember I was I'm like a couple years younger than Freddie Adu or something along those lines. So he was someone that like I know at the club level when I was playing, everyone kind of talked about. Something to keep in mind too, just the environment. I think what people don't realize is there were no development academies, right? So that did not exist. Like American soccer had not scaled to that point yet where we were producing homegrown talent for these professional clubs. They legitimately had to go out scout in a number of different ways. And I remember Freddie, he had the reason he had impressed at the club level because he was always playing against older age groups, and so at the older age group level, he was still bagging goals. His physicality looked like it stood out in a really great way. And keep in mind too, man, soccer was really in this country, I would say around the world even, was kind of changing in a big way. If you guys remember, this was the total 90 era, the start of it, and all the hype that came around that, right? So Freddie Adu was featured in a lot of those commercials, right? Like right when the Total 90 era came up for Nike, Freddie Adu was also coming up. He had gotten like recruited by IMG Academy, I think. And if you guys aren't familiar with IMG Academy, they're that boarding school down in Florida for elite level athletes in this country across a number of sports. And when it came to soccer, they recruited heavily the best talent all across the country. Usually you were called into like a top 20 camp. Those camps are residencies. And for reference, guys like Breck Shea have gotten some of those same nods. Of course, Breck Shea came into it when he was 17 years old, not 14, for the U20 residency camp. But a combination of all of those things, and Freddie still, even at that elite level, in an older age group, was still finding a way to hold his own. Like, and I think most coaches probably figured if he can do this, right, going up against 17, 18-year-olds as a 14-year-old at an elite level, still holding his own, still contributing in a massive way, why can't he take that next jump up? So I think Freddie, a lot of it was just the perfect storm for him, right? And again, I feel like you look back at Freddie Adu's early career in MLS, and the honestly, bro, the documentary like Onside perfectly positioned it. I remember thinking we were talking about this when I was a teenager. I was like, everyone's asking, how is he going to do? What is he thinking? That's what every player my age was asking themselves. What is he thinking? How is he just processing all of this? It has to be immense pressure because, dude, like anybody, right now, even calling Cavan Sullivan the next Messi, like how much pressure is that, right? Messi's the greatest player we've ever seen play this game. At that time, Pelé and Maradona were always the argument. Messi hadn't done what he's done up to this point yet, so to compare Freddie Adu to Pelé, like the greatest ever, right? Five-time World Cup winner, like you're or three-time World Cup winner. For a country as big as Brazil's won it 5 times all the way around. Like you're not going to ever live up to those standards. Like I almost thought even back then as a teenager, he could have a great game and it's not going to feel like it because the comparisons are fucking ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like there's no kid who's going to live up to that. But nonetheless, man, he got his shot, and unfortunately, while there were some bright spots, don't get me wrong, we all saw how it went.
Yeah, I think when you don somebody the next Pele, which obviously that's a really high bar to put somebody on, and doing all these commercials with Pele, yeah, it just kind of goes into a recipe for disaster. And I am one of those people that I think full heartedly, and I still believe to this day, we need to ban the phrase "the next Messi," the blank Messi, from anybody's vocabulary because that is a kiss of death. From every player that has ever been coined the blank Messi because Boyan was supposed to be the Spanish Messi.
Yeah,
Uh,
bro. You know what I think it is, though, if you really think about it? I think it's a symptom of America trying to create its own superstar, right? Pulisic suffered from that, right? The LeBron James of soccer, because the only comparison we could really make at that time, you couldn't call Pulisic a Messi.
Also, thank
Um,
you, Pawn Stars. That one,
yeah.
thanks, Pawn
So
Stars.
yeah, so like I think like even back with Freddy Adu, bro. I'll be honest. Like we didn't have development academies. There was no clear-cut way of identifying the absolute best young stars and young talents in this country, especially back then. And so Freddie was like just the product of America trying to pinpoint a homegrown superstar so it could be more relevant in global soccer. That's really what I think it is. And Cavan Sullivan, same thing, right? I think to an extent, right, while America does produce great talents, we have a pretty decent national team with the U.S. men's national team. Pulisic is awesome, Wes McKinney, all those guys, but no one is that next world-class talent. And so this 14-year-old comes along and you hear some of the same comparisons again because America is starving for this. We're starving for our own generational talent in this sport, like we've seen in other sports, right? LeBron with basketball is a perfect example, right? All the hype he got in high school, comparisons to Michael Jordan, those probably would have been a little more realistic back then because I don't know, we almost know more, right? The best league in the world is hosted in this country for basketball. So we almost know more of how his career might go, what to kind of expect. He has all the intangibles. He's balling out. But again, I think it's just America trying to put its stamp on as many, global sports as it possibly can. And it happened with Freddie back then, and it's happening with Cavan Sullivan now.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that that's really what happened. I think, and then that kind of leads to the worry for Caven Sullivan, where it's kind of the pressure is on not obviously him putting his own pressure, but also the whole country of the U.S. wanting this to be the guy. Like this is the guy that we're all hoping to see. It's kind of funny how like early days of Insert Name FC where I somehow I got to interview Heath Pierce. Don't know how I pulled that to this day, but I did it. I think about that interview because I asked him about the quote unquote golden generation that everyone keeps calling this current U.S. men's national team, and he was like, "There's no way that this is the golden generation." And he kept telling me like, "You will if you go and watch like the youth levels, you will see guys that you're like, okay, we're definitely building something here."
Hmm.
And weirdly enough, and it's funny because that always like it always keeps coming back to my head. And then going working at the Dynamo Academy and seeing guys that like I'm like, wow, I'm actually we have players. There is some players here. For the Dynamo, for example, I mean, um, Raphael, who is who currently the captain of the U15, I think it's U15 or U16, U16 Salvador national team, the team that got the first ever qualifier for World Cup for El Salvador. He plays for the Dynamo Academy. Obviously a David Garcia who doing his thing with Venezuela, and I mean right now, Mateo Di Morelli, who you know keep an eye on for that kid because that kid is disgusting. That dude is a dog. But he also getting actually had a potentially could have been playing for Albania, but chose the U.S. So like things like that, you're gonna see more players more and more, and I'm sure the FC Dallas Academy has names like that. I mean, I literally saw a kid named Daniel Barrett, who's a track star playing center back, probably could play fullback, honestly. And this kid had a clear runaway, was going to score a goal. Daniel Barrett caught up to him. Mind you, Barrett was like 13 years old, playing U15 level, catches up to this kid, gets the ball, and then sends it back and gets an assist. I'm not making that up. I was like, this kid, dude, the potential that I've seen some of these players, I'm like, yeah, we're doing okay. Hopefully they don't go to college. That's all I had. That's all I'm worried about is that the Dynamo are somehow going to screw this up and these kids are going to go to college, and which isn't a bad idea. It's good if they get educational, but I mean, if there's kids that they should be signed. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and I mean, even like I said, I think they reference one other kid that I'm very aware of because there's like links to Barcelona already. Of course, there are. I don't know if he came out of that Barca academy, but he Julian Hall up
Hmm.
in New York in the Red Bulls, right? So, 16 years old, very very promising young talent. Probably going to end up in Europe at some point. We even see guys like over the years, like Georgi Mihalovic, have some of that same hype coming out as a youngster. So I love what Mo Edu said in this episode where he talks a lot about, or he mentioned really quickly about like when players peaks tend to come into play, like the basically the overarching theme was the point he was trying to get across was we don't know the future for any player is a giant question mark. Youngsters today who have all the hype in the world may not pan out, right? They may have been great up to a certain point in their teenage years. And then again, we've seen plenty of players be somewhat relevant all throughout their career. And then in their late 20s, a crazy, run of form happens and it springboards their entire career. And they just seem to age like fine wine, right? So, I think with all of this said, there's plenty of young talents. Cavan Sullivan tends to be one of the most exciting because of his age and because of the potential that we see when we watch him play. But I think we do have to obviously tread carefully, right? Because that Freddy Adu story just looms over him.
Yeah, and that's always going to be the thing. And I think also one of the most important things when it comes to growing up a player, not only through coaching, but family is a big thing. I think how you raise and how your support system is going to be very telling on how his approach is. And the Sullivan family, I gotta say, is 100% a soccer family.
Yep.
Obviously, father, former pro. Mom was captain of her college team. I forgot what college she played for, but
University of
also
Pennsylvania.
also very northeastern family.
Yep.
Maybe Italian. Definitely have some connection to Jersey because, my God. And I loved it though. And obviously older brother Quinn Sullivan, who currently plays for the Philadelphia Union as well. Also, I admire his confidence to say he's the better Sullivan in the family, even though he does not have a contract for Manchester City. Um, but, but I still admire the confidence. But yes,
Scored a banger in the episode. Yeah, his family, bro, through and through a soccer family. And you know what's crazy is it reminds me a lot of my own family in an interesting way, right? I think his dad is quintessential my dad. Not the background, right? I mean, my dad honestly didn't pick up soccer until like we were kids. He was more of a basketball and a baseball guy, in terms of like playing, right? But watching, he watched, of course, we're a soccer family through and through. He watched all as a young adult, brought us into the game. It's the reason I love Barcelona and any other soccer that I watch. Took me to all of the Dallas Burn games, so I'm an FC Dallas fan at heart to this day. Of course, having played in the academy myself, but I think like just you watch the home videos, right? You watch like his demeanor in the crowd. His dad's almost never satisfied. There's always more that can be done. Those car rides home where, it's might as well be a full VOD session, right? You're just breaking down what you could have done better. And dad's never really content, never satisfied, and therefore Cavan never should be either. It felt like that. Like I had plenty of times where my mom's also like, as soon as my dad was done talking to me and my brothers, like my mom would come in and kind of have us focus more on the core message, not so much how he delivered it. And yeah, man, I think some families may watch that and be like, hey, it's a little harsh, it's a little tough. I think personally he could have been even more tough. And I will say that like it's kind of weird, but like even my own son, right? Like watching this, me playing with my son every single day. We kick around the soccer ball every single day. And I don't know, man. It's just I'm hard on him. He's barely about to be 2 years old, but I'm hard on him. I want him not to be a professional soccer player one day. If he does that, great. But I just want him to whatever he decides to do to know that it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be really hard. You want to be good at anything. And that quote that I think Cavan said his dad gave him, right? If you want to be great, you're gonna have to be different, right? Something along those lines. I think that I don't know if his parents raised him to be the phenom that he is at 14 years old. I think that, of course, they helped him every step of the way. I just think that they love this game and they saw something in him and really wanted to help nurture that and push him to every bit of his potential so that it wasn't wasted at the end of the day. And man, I'm willing to bet he's also extremely grateful. So it's not like a scene from the movie was it Whiplash?
Oh yeah, that when he's like the teacher's like throwing stuff at him and everything like that.
Yeah, it's not like a scene from the movie Whiplash, but I think that if you want to be great, you know that you're going to be on a road that nobody else is on. You're going to be doing things that nobody else is doing, putting in work when nobody else is putting in that work. And so for me, man, it's honestly at times I feel like I can be a little bit hard on my 1.5-year-old son, but at the same time, feel a little bit better knowing that there are parents out there who approach it the same way.
I think it goes to the point where I'm sure there was a moment for Caven where he said this is what he wants, and the parents were like, "Are you sure this is what you want to do? Because we'll go full send. Like, I mean, this is happening. Like, like there's no backing out after. There's no going back. Like once you're saying you're in it, because also MLS academies are expensive. So
Facts,
and
big
so
facts.
I mean, if this is what you want to do, then we're not gonna half-ass it. We're gonna go, full send and very Italian about it. And I mean, yes, his father was very vocal, and I think, but that's any dad at any sporting event, they're gonna be vocal. So I think that it's perfectly fine. I mean, obviously, as long as it doesn't get physical, it's perfectly fine. Also, I'm gonna just point this out, and maybe someone could judge me. I don't care, but Mama Sullivan, really nice gal. I think I rewatched it a few times trying to figure out where my stance was on that woman. But yeah, she's a lady. So that's
Yeah. And I think that the parents contrast each other really well. Like I'll be honest, man. As much as like, yeah, we say
she
it's
smiles a lot. Like that's the
yeah,
one thing I took. Well, is that was also kind of chill and vibing. But like when he's here, and it's kind of like that, right? That thing you need. You have the stern parent, but then here comes the other one. Like kind of how you mentioned with your mom saying like this was the message. Make sure you guys are aware. This is the message. This is what mattered more.
yeah.
And I think it was obviously both of them are on the same page. Clearly a happy couple. So
But bro, I mean, look at any. I'm not saying any, right? But you look at some of like the more high achieving athletes throughout history across a number of sports. Their dads usually were fucking psycho, bro. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not saying you have to be, right? But
the Ball family.
yeah, the Ball family, the Williams sisters, uh, who's the other Tiger Woods dad. There's just
Oh
like
man.
there's all these examples that we can point to, but one thing one common denominator for me is that they all seem to understand that if you want to be great, it requires something that you never thought you were capable of doing, whether that be consistency of work over time, the level of effort that you put in, whatever the skill, right? How much skill you think you have versus what you actually need to have to be great. Like all of those things, I think at the end of the day, kids are naive and they only know what they know. And it's a parent's job to really kind of again push them to a point where you can see that potential rise to the top, right? You can see them grow and reach a new height they never reached before. So I don't know, man. I mean, to me, like I said, as a new parent, a newish parent who's watching this back, as someone who had a hard ass of a dad myself, we've also got into some crazy fucking arguments, me and my dad, over games, bro. Come home after a loss, after a game that we felt like we shouldn't have lost, and I'll be honest, bro. At times, it did get a little bit physical, as a teenager who had an ego and dealing with a dad who felt like he could be doing more and mom trying to separate us and things like that. I mean, like that, things just get heated. And I don't understand that they have to. It was cool to see that, I guess, we never really saw it in this docu-series. Maybe behind closed doors, it does get that way sometimes. Because teenagers are teenagers, bro. Like they'll talk back, they'll rebel. Tempers get heated and flared, and sometimes things go overboard. But I feel like sometimes, like I said, parents always mean well, but the delivery of the message isn't always as well received.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you got to retake a test in order to get a C. So,
Hey, yo, facts, bro. I felt that in the very beginning. I felt that. I was like, bro, see, I was like, that's all I need, man. Get me the hell out of here.
C's
I
get you C's
don't.
get you degrees, man. That's all.
Yep.
That's all you need to know.
I was like, I felt that, bro. I felt that.
But obviously on the flip end, and that's obviously the Philadelphia Union part, because in order for a 14-year-old to get his starting his opportunity to go out there and show himself. Well, you need a team that's probably in a very desperate situation to even have that moment of clarity. And obviously at this time, which is just kind of funny when I think about when Goals TV, when we're doing, Wake Up MLS, and I don't know if bold is the right word, but I was just willing to say it that Philadelphia was just mid, even though they were technically undefeated. Um, but I was like, this team is just mid, man. Like they're not really that good. Like, and I remember pissed off a lot of Philadelphia Union fans, which that led to a lot of great conversations after that. But I mean, yeah, Philadelphia was not looking great. Obviously, injuries were coming into play. For some reason, Jim Curtin was complaining about national team call-ups as well. I mean, God forbid you have players good enough to be recognized by the national team, but to quote it, he said all of that horrible shit like injuries and call-ups. So,
Yeah. And I think actually, bro, it's even more difficult than how you explained it. Because you think about it, right? Yeah, you have to be in a desperate situation to call up a 14-year-old to even train with you, right? Just like something different, something fresh. Let's mix some things up because clearly no wins in what was it, 10, 11 games? We were talking about Philly last year, right? When we talked about it a lot in the show, just how far they had fallen from grace, it felt like. So that environment has to be there for Cavan to get that call up. But then in order to get into a game, I mean, as a manager, I wouldn't feel comfortable putting him in a very tight game, even with 5, 10 minutes left. Like anything could happen. He could have a momentary lapse. He could get nervous, cough up the ball, a counterattack happens, you lose the game. It almost has to be a situation where it's risk free in terms of when you actually put him in. And so, building up to that point, if he hadn't gone in when he did, I would have understood because like you can't. Every result matters when you have a drought like that going on. And at the same time, we how often have we seen all across global football youngsters get put in before they're ready, and the flame just goes out, right? Just like that, the confidence drops to an all-time low. They feel like maybe they're not ready, and then it's reflected, right? You never really hear that player's name again for a little while. So, in this day and age, like just with the age of the internet, like everyone is just completely glued to someone like Cavan Sullivan and his journey as he prepares for potentially minutes in a first team game. But dude, I mean, Jim Curtin had a big conundrum, like just again, juggling having to get results versus when he could actually put this player in. Super difficult situation.
yeah, and it's crazy with Jim Curtin, once praised as a very respectable coach in MLS, to really much the butt of all jokes, especially with the whole his comment about there's 10% of the league and the rest are in disarray. That obviously aged very well for him. Um, but yeah, you're talking about at that point there's discussions of when is the right time to bring up Caven, when is his turn to be up with the 20 man roster for a match. Yes, he's doing well with Philadelphia Union too. Obviously, he's well at this point. Academy practices isn't even should even be a thought for him. Now it's him training with the first team, getting minutes with them, maybe getting some wisdom from Alejandro Bedoya. I don't know what wisdom that would be, but yes, get something from Alejandro Bedoya. Um, but even having your brother, and I think that probably is also very helpful. Having your older brother be there for you, have that guy like, hey, okay, they brought you down, now you got to get back up, And I think that was also a concern initially for everybody else is he is a little dude, he has to go up against grown men, and what happens when he has to go body for body with somebody, and what's his response to it. And I mean, I'm glad that Quinn did have that whole like nobody cares, man, get back up kind of mentality with him. I think that that's how it should be,
Yeah.
especially in the MLS, because MLS is very a physical league. I mean, you heard Messi. Messi said it. It's a physical league. And so you anticipate to get hit pretty frequently in this league.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the one difference I kind of pointed to a little bit earlier in the show. between him and Freddy Adu. I think Freddy Adu physically was a little more. He was probably just as short, but I think he had a better just build. So to kind of hold his own, and again, I'm sure Cavan's been playing against older kids, for quite some time. But back then, it really meant, I think, a lot more because there wasn't a fully fledged pipeline of young academy talent that you had access to go up against every day. You really had to go out of your way to play against older kids. And so I think, Freddie might have been slightly more ready physically, but then again, I think it's also where Cavan's strengths on the ball with his agility, his quickness, the pace beyond that first 1 to 2 touches, like that burst of speed that he has, all of those things could potentially be a reason and a factor as to why he may be more successful.
Yeah, but they did decide eventually that this was the right game for him, which was against the New England Revolution, which honestly probably the perfect opponent to bring in, at least the idea of bringing in Caven Sullivan to be on the 20-man roster. And obviously everyone's excited for him. He's going through his first pre-game meal, which very Italian, chicken parm. So validates my argument about them being possibly an Italian family. Um,
I think it's also the fact that it's just like a good
it's
carb-loaded
actually a
meal.
pretty good pregame meal too. But it does lead to one of my all-time complaints, being an uncle to a teenager. Um, Kids don't like to eat. I don't know what it is about it, but they'll like say they're hungry and then eat like half a burger, and then they say, "Here, Theo, finish the rest." And you wonder why I'm fat.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that. Like, yeah, kids don't eat, bro.
I love how
Yeah,
Quinn was like, "You got to eat more pasta, bro."
yeah. You don't. Well, shit. I would tell the same thing. Like, bro, you have to. Like, this is, and it's in an annoying way too. Because I don't know, man. I remember I was coming through tournaments. Like, we had this one coach of mine who would like, anytime we went out of town for a tournament, we were always going to like Spaghetti Warehouse. I don't know if that restaurant's still a thing anymore, but we were
It very
always,
much is.
anytime we could go to like any market that had a Spaghetti Warehouse, that's where we were going because it was just carb loading. And it was always the night before. So carb load the night before, and then we'd have like a couple small meals before games the next day. And I mean, it does work, but I could totally see where Kevin's like, hey, bro, honestly, man, I'm kind of posted out. I'm good. And at the same time, too, he may not have been hungry, bro. I know if butterflies were going in my stomach, the day of a game, I'm probably not eating. Probably not eating.
As someone that worked in the Dynamo Academy, I could tell you we ate a lot of pasta. Like,
Yeah.
now that
It's
I
just
think
it's just
about
the
it,
it's just the best thing for you, bro.
I
The
had
best
a
thing for you.
lot of pasta. Matter of fact, when we went to Maryland for MLS next flex, I remember try to say that 3 times. Um, we were going. It was funny because like they were showing us like what's the first meal that we're gonna have when we got to Maryland, and they said something about a vodka sauce, and I was like, oh, I'm actually looking forward to this. Like it was funny because me and like all the other coaches were like, ooh, vodka sauce. I never had vodka sauce. I want to know what that's all about. And then our strength and conditioning coach was like, no, the kids can't have vodka. And I was like, well, once you heat it up, obviously it's not going to have the vodka aftermath. But he wasn't having
Yeah.
it. He was, so we didn't get to eat which I was like, okay, well, let them not have the vodka sauce, but can you guys at least like slide in the vodka sauce on my side? Wow, I feel like being an uncle again. Anyways, but no, yeah, I mean, obviously he goes to the whole pregame thing. I love the when they were going into the car, you have Quinn with his little hygiene kit. Caven has like literally nothing, and then the first thing he's like, "I wonder if my shin guards in the locker room."
I know, right? He's like already out the door. He's like, I wonder if I have everything. But yeah, bro. I mean, first stage jitters. He probably just got his mind solely on the game.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously for you obviously you played college soccer. What was that like when it was your first college game?
Ah, man, I was nervous. Um, and never in a. I like the analogy he used when Cavan talked about in the series because I totally agree. There's two kinds of nervous, right? You're either butterflies in your stomach, right? Like you're ready to get out there, but again, you haven't done this before, so you're a little bit nervous, um, or shitting yourself. And I've seen players who are shitting themselves. I had a couple teammates in my freshman year who were shitting themselves. And it's not because like they weren't good enough for the moment, not because they weren't like ready. We had been training for months, right? Like we were ready. It's just you're finally here. The lights are on, they're bright, the crowd's out there, usually bigger than the crowds you bring in at a high school game, usually. And yeah, man, I think it for me, it was sinking in as a defender. The biggest thing I was nervous about, I was too small to play the position that I played in high school. So I was a center back in high school, got to college, could not play that at the D2 level. I was too small. So I was playing a position that I never played in a formal game before, playing outside back. And that's what I was nervous about. I was like, what if I just go out there, my brain shuts off and I don't do the right things? What happens if, this happens or this happens? So I was nervous up until you make that first tackle, right? Up until you and I'm sure Cavan felt it too. When you get the ball and you make a move with it, you just get right back into your flow state. So that's how it was for me. And don't get me wrong, there was plenty of bad moments that I had throughout my career. But in that first game, I actually thought it was half decent. I only played half the game. And it was one of those situations where I came on at halftime and I was just I was like teammates were coming around like, hey, settle in, right? Get the first tackle early because the minute that you do, you're gonna feel a shit ton better. Tell me to go out there, have fun, don't think about it. And when it came time for the next class, the next freshman to come through in my sophomore year, I was doing the same thing for those guys. So I think your teammates and your coach do a lot to help you settle in, but more often than not, man, it's just mental.
Yeah. And the game goes pretty much as a blowout. It's not even like remotely close. Quinn goes in first as a substitute. I don't know why anybody was shocked by that. Like, oh, there's a Sullivan, just not that Sullivan. Which,
Could you imagine if Cavan had gone in before him?
yeah. Also, I don't know how I would not want to like have anybody play the broadcast if I was Quinn because to hear like, oh, the other Sullivan, like,
He'll always be that man, unfortunately.
he's like, hey man, I was pro first. Like,
I know, bro. Like he'll always be the other Sullivan just because again, when you have your brother just in the same name circles as like Messi, right? The next Messi or whatever, it's like you're never gonna be the star of the show in that family. But I thought his demeanor as an older brother, perfect, bro. I think he uh like didn't seem like he was getting any like it didn't bother him. Like he just wanted Cavan to be successful and knew he was kind of a baller in his own right. Like you said, he was the first pro in that family as far as the kids go. So and he scored a banger, bro. Scored an absolute banger. The celebration was fucking awesome too, to be honest.
yeah, it was really cool for him, for his brother to be there with him when he scored that goal. Obviously, it's not his first goal, but just him scoring that goal, his brother's there. I think in some sense, kind of maybe shakes a little bit off for Caven as well, because he's not now he's kind of like not thinking too much about the game itself. Now he's like, hey, my brother just scored. Now I kind of want to go in and show that I'm the better finisher than Quinn Sullivan because he did make that statement earlier in the video in the episode.
Yeah.
But he comes and I mean, Kernan's like, all right, well, we're good now. We can't screw this up. So he's like, we're gonna bring him in on the 85th minute. And he does it, becomes the youngest player to ever play in an MLS game. And breaks the Freddy Adu record. I mean, I'm pretty sure we were all talking about Caven Watch because of the potential of him breaking that record. I did watch the game. I mean, the game was it was a blowout. I mean, there's nothing really else much to say.
If you were neutral, it's boring as shit, to be honest. I mean, like, yeah, good game for the Union, but they needed it at that point.
Yeah, it was one of those like glad they got that one, but yeah. So Caven comes in. Um, like I said, there's only so much you could do to like 5+ minutes, But I think he gets a shot. It obviously didn't go in, but yeah. I mean, at least you got it out of the way, right? You got the debut out of the way. Now, at least in hopes it should be smooth sailings from there.
Yeah, 100%. That's what you want, right? It's the biggest things, just like almost like you said, get it out of the way because there's so much anticipation that gets built up. I mean, the whole damn episode, it was a countdown, right, to potentially breaking the record for the youngest player to play in an MLS game, and it was just counting down day by day, right? And it kind of maybe gives you a little bit of an insight into how he may have thought about it. It's like a goal he had. I want to leave my stamp as far as my career goes on this league by being the youngest player to ever play professional soccer from in MLS. And at a time where MLS is bigger than it's ever been, that's always going to be the case moving forward, of course, I'm sure. But it's just, again, it's a completely different scenario than Freddy Adu, right? To be the youngest player in the league at a time where the league was a minnow in comparison to every other league globally, versus when Cavan Sullivan's doing it, and then has the backing of the Manchester City contract, right? He's going to move there when he's 18. Like there's all of this hype, and I'm sure he had to be thinking, God, I need to make sure that I live up to that in this first game in some way, shape, or form. My touches have to be solid. Let's try to get a shot off. Let's try to create something with these few minutes that I get. So, all in all, I'm sure he's glad he got out of the way, but I'm also sure he's glad that it went probably as well as it could have gone outside of maybe him scoring.
No, yeah, definitely. And I think the other thing too is we need to, as far as like Americans go, like stop making this feel like this is not the norm in football in this sport. I mean, obviously, 14 years old is a little bit is a little young for it, but I mean, last year we literally witnessed Lamine Yamal, 16 years old, doing it in the biggest stages of them all. Doing it for Barcelona in the Champions League, doing it for Spain in the Euro. Turns 17 and wins a Euro. What a birthday present that is. Like like things like that. Like it's normal in
Yeah.
that aspect. Like that's why why it's one of those things that I shit on college soccer. No offense, but like one of the things I do shit on college soccer is that like while I do think it is a good resource, especially here in the MLS. It's just my problem is that you're hoping that this guy that once again is like 21, 23 around that age range to fight for a start, fight for a roster spot, not even for a starting spot, fighting for a roster spot on this MLS team, whereas most guys in that age group are at least solidified in their role with their teams, and so like that's one of the biggest things, and like with the academy systems where you have a lot of clubs across the world that do utilize their academies. There's some that don't. I mean, Real Madrid is a prime example. One of those teams that just doesn't really. But when they have an academy player, wow, that guy pans out. But you know, but more often than not, they buy their guys, which
Yeah. Every club has their own strategy. You know what I mean in terms of how they bring players. There's actually been more than a few ballers out of the academy at Real Madrid that have gone on to become fantastic players. And you deal with guys like Odegaard, guys like Takefusa Kubo, just some of these guys again that have been absolute ballers. But you know, America is, you can just tell with this, right? With the Cavan Sullivan story, America is ready to have its own, right? Its own Lamine Yamal. And by the way, I thought that's the first thing I thought of when he said, I want to be the best player ever, right? It's for me, I didn't go straight to Messi and making that comparison. I thought immediately of Lamine Yamal. And I think that if we get that moving forward, if that ends up becoming the comparison, right? Or even, again, kids like Ethan Nwaneri, who's getting a lot of shouts after what he's done with Arsenal this season. Um, it's going to be a crazy generation of talent that could be coming through. And if Cavan Sullivan ends up being at the top of it, can only imagine what soccer in America will look like at that point. So there's a lot of pressure on him, man, to be honest. I think he realizes that, but I also hope he realizes that he's going up against an insane baller. And I think that Lamine Yamal, as far as youngsters go, is probably the standard, right? At least as far as attackers go, someone that Cavan Sullivan can directly compare his game to. Other guys like, I mean, whether it's Asensio at Real Madrid, Cubarsí at Barcelona, defenders and whatnot, probably not more of a direct comparison. But someone like Lamine Yamal, that's someone that I think he should be mentally not chasing, but if he is going to make comparisons, I don't compare yourself to Messi, bro. Compare yourself to that kid because that kid is well on his way to being the next global generational talent at 17 years old. So that's going to be fun to watch, I think, over the next 3, 4, 5 years.
also don't forget about Thiago Messi, who wants to be playing alongside Lamine Yamal, which I thought, wow, that kid's reaching, and then I realized his age, and I'm like, oh shoot, that actually might be a thing.
Bro, when it's in 2030, Lamine Yamal will be 23 years old.
Playing in the Saudi Arabia World Cup.
Who is that guy?